everyone, today we're going to be talking about my favorite director of all time, Quentin Tarantino. So let's talk. So Quentin Tarantino is my favorite director of all time, and I couldn't think of a better time than to rank all his films than today, because celebrating 30 years of my favorite director, I couldn't ask for more. So I'm really excited to do this video for you guys. We are only going to be talking about his directed films, so you won't see From Dusk Till Dawn, True Romance, or Natural Born Killers on here. Even though I do love all three of those films, we're just going to be concentrating on the films that he directed. So without further ado, let's dive right into number 9. Death Proof. Obviously, this is probably usually number 9 on most people's lists. But it's still a very good movie. This was released with Robert Rodriguez's Planet Terror as a Grindhouse back in 2007, I believe. And it is actually, it's still a fun little movie. I have the extended version of just Death Proof as its own film, and I think it's 113 minutes, and I think that's the way you should watch it. You get a little more fleshed out. I think the problem with Death Proof is, and the reason why I put it last, is it's just too much style over substance, I feel like. And I get what he was going for with him and Robert Rodriguez. They were trying to go for a grindhouse movie feel, what they grew up with, you know, the cigarette burns in the corner, the way it's shot, you know, scenes just end, because grindhouse films, you know, the way it was like the film would get passed around theater to theater, and it would just, the film itself would get dirty and grimy and get fingerprints all over it, and, you know, you'd start to lose little shots, things cut off, the reels aren't the same anymore as when they first got printed, and, you know, that's what he wanted to show, what he grew up watching. But I feel like the film hurts because of it. If it's more concentrated, if they could just concentrate more on the actual story, I think it would have been an even better film overall. But I still don't want to take anything away from it. Kurt Russell is amazing in this movie, and I think if they didn't work here, we wouldn't get him in the Hateful Eights or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So, you know, as Stuntman Mike, he is great. Rosario Dawson's great in this movie. I think this is overall, it's still a fun movie. If you like Tarantino and you're a fan of his work, you're still going to have a good time with Death Proof. It's just I can't put it above the other 8 films. So then at number 8, we have Inglourious Basterds. And I know that this is where I'm going to lose some people, but just remember that this is my opinion and my opinion only. And the only reason I put Inglourious Basterds at number 8 is just because I don't go back to it that much. It's not my favorite Tarantino film, and, you know, I don't think it ever will be. There is some amazing scenes in this movie and some amazing performances. Obviously, the bar scene where, you know, 3 fingers, or 3 fingers, depending on where you're from. That scene, the tension in that scene is amazing, because, you know, as the viewer, we know who is a real German soldier and who isn't, but as far as them, they're trying to figure it out, and it's an incredible scene. It's just so well directed. Obviously, Brad Pitt in this movie is amazing. I would have actually liked more time with the Bastards. I think that's the thing that hurts it the most for me. I mean, as far as like a last act in the movie theater, it is incredible. It is amazing. It ends well, and, you know, Tarantino pretty much calls this shot. This might just be my masterpiece, and obviously, in my opinion, it's not his masterpiece, but it's still a great piece of work. If you're a fan of Inglourious Basterds, I am not taking anything away from you. I know this is a lot of people's favorite Tarantino movie, but for me, it's just, I don't go back to it that much. I've seen it, I believe, 4 times, and as far as everything, I usually revisit most of his work once a year. I'll skip Inglourious Basterds every once in a while, but, you know, it's still a great piece of filmmaking. If you haven't seen it, I still recommend checking it out. So, at number 7, I have The Hateful Eight. And this basically is Clue in the Snow, set in the Old West in the 1800s. And I love this movie. I mean, you're probably thinking, oh, but it's so low at number 7. Well, I still love this movie. I'll tell you a little story. Back when this movie first came out, it was my first vacation I ever got from my job that I have now. It was snowing out, but I wanted to go see this movie, so I had a Jeep. I drove in the snow to go see this movie in the theaters. I was the only person in the theater, and I had the time of my life. I couldn't, and it's perfect because it was snowing out. This movie takes place in the snow. The snow shots are just so beautiful. I love this. I love the shots in the snow. It's probably his best shot film, I think, you know. But as far as the movie goes, we get some great performances from Jennifer Jason Leigh, Kurt Russell, Samuel Jackson, Walter Goggins. You know, everyone is nailing their role perfectly with some surprise cameos in this movie, you know, it's from certain actors. I'm not going to spoil it completely for you. It's a good little movie, you know, it's like a one setting, but, you know, which is weird for Tarantino, but he really nailed it directing this movie. I truly love The Hateful Eight. I can't say a bad thing about it. The score is amazing, actually. It's something that should be pointed out, is how great the score is. I believe one of the tracks in the beginning was actually on The Thing soundtrack but wasn't used in the film, so that's something that's pretty cool if you're a fan of The Thing, which makes perfect sense. It's very similar to The Thing in the fact that it takes place in the snow and these people are trapped, you know, with each other, and we try to figure out who out of them is the bad guy. So it's a nice little story like that. It's one of those, and I think you're going to really enjoy it if you haven't seen it yet. It's shot in 70mm film because Tarantino is one of the last directors who truly cherishes shooting on film. I unfortunately have never seen this on film. I wish I had. You know, maybe one day we'll get a 4K release of this and I can experience it at a higher quality than on just regular Blu-ray, but I'm still not going to take anything away from this movie. If you haven't seen The Hateful Eight, make sure you check this one out. So at number 6, we have Jackie Brown. And Jackie Brown for a long time was my least favorite Tarantino movie, but as I have revisited over the last couple of years, it's slowly climbing up my rankings. I think it's because like I just looked at it as like coming off of Pulp Fiction. It's not like Pulp Fiction, but that really can't take away from the film. This is a beautifully made film, and it just shows you how Tarantino can just revive people's careers, because you get Pam Grier, Robert Forster, just, you know, in career performances. These are both my favorite Pam Grier and Robert Forster movies, and I love Jackie Brown. It's a great movie. You know, Samuel Jackson, as always, is perfectly cast in this movie. Michael Keaton plays ATF agent Ray Nicolette, actually reprised that same role a couple years later in Out of Sight with Jennifer Lopez and George Clooney. So it's a nice little carryover. I love that, and I'm a big Michael Keaton fan, so it kind of worked out. And the movie in general is great. I really think that it's just a hangout movie. And, you know, he would do that again in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I think that I had to get older myself to appreciate a movie like this, especially since a big part of this movie is about growing old. And, you know, get older as a viewer, I think you learn to appreciate movies like this more and understand that a movie doesn't have to be just pure violence. Not that that's not in here, but it doesn't have to be that kind of movie for the movie to still be good. And I think as a viewer, this movie will only get better with age for me, and it'll probably rise up my rankings if we do this again in 10 years when I'm 40. We've hit our top 5, and coming in at number 5, we have Django Unchained, starring Jamie Foxx and Christoph Waltz. And this is another great movie, obviously, from Tarantino, and this is exploring a very, very, very hard issue in slavery, and a slave getting their revenge on the man who right now is holding his wife, played by Kerry Washington, and the slave owner, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and I think his best performance ever, and I am not lying when I say that. I love his performance in this movie. He plays a monster, but yet somehow it's so captivating as Calvin Candy. In a movie of great performances, you know, you get Samuel Jackson playing an incredible performance, somebody who you just hate, and you know, it's Samuel Jackson, but he does it so well. And you get Kerry Washington, and you get Christoph Waltz in his second Academy Award winning performance directed by Tarantino. So this is just a phenomenal movie. The way this movie is shot, obviously Tarantino loves to play homage, so it's paying homage to, you know, the works of Sergio Leone, you know, with spaghetti westerns from the 60s that he loved to watch, and it's based on a Sergio Leone movie called Django, actually. Well, the character's name is at the very least. It's shot very similar to how Leone used to shoot his movies, and especially with the blood and gore in this movie. It's so over the top, and I know people didn't like that at the time, but I loved it. I loved the gore. I love how violent this movie is. I was captivated. For a long time, this was a lot higher on my list. I mean, it's just, you know, with Tarantino, I can just go back and forth. I cherish all his movies, but if you haven't seen Django Unchained, it's another classic by Tarantino. Alright, coming in at number 4 is Quentin Tarantino's most recent film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, and Margot Robbie, with plenty of supporting roles from Al Pacino and Kurt Russell thrown in there. And it's another phenomenal movie, and actually, I was surprised to find out how many people actually don't like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I'm thinking it's just because of the slower pace and the pullback action until we get to the very end of the movie. But as far as like Brad Pitt on the ranch scenes with, the Manson family, I've never felt better tension than I have in that scene. So that's just, to Tarantino's direction. And people also said that you could have cut Margot Robbie's character out completely, but I feel like personally the movie doesn't work without her character. Plus, she plays it amazingly, so why would you cut that out of the movie? And I've heard people complain about it. I would never. It's an amazing part that she plays in this movie. I love Margot Robbie's portrayal in this movie. Also, Leonardo DiCaprio is great. That scene in the trailer, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. You're a goddamn alcoholic. You can't just have one or two whiskey sours. You gotta have a ton. You're a goddamn alcoholic. I just love it. It's so funny. I was cracking up in the theater at that. And then obviously Brad Pitt won the Academy Award for this movie for Best Supporting Actor. Well deserved, long overdue, and he did it incredibly. It's a great performance in this movie. He plays, he's just the epitome of cool. How could you not love Brad Pitt in this movie? This is a role he was born to play. Tarantino knows how to get the best out of his actors, and he sure did here. Well, we've made it to the top 3, and any one of these movies can be swapped to be my number 1. But at number 3 as of today, it's Reservoir Dogs. Tarantino's first movie, starring Harvey Keitel, Quentin Tarantino himself, Steve Buscemi, Eddie Bunker, and plenty more. Oh, Michael Madsen, and plenty more. So this movie is just a great movie, showing what Tarantino can do with a low budget. This is his first directed movie, and when you think about it, it's a heist movie, but you don't see the heist. We just hear what happened at the heist. And that is just amazing that Tarantino can do that. And this is also our first glimpse of Tarantino and how he shoots action, how he shoots dialogue. Tarantino knows what he's doing. These shots are all chosen beautifully. If you know the ending with Tim Roth and everything like that, there's little hints at who the rat is throughout the entire movie, because Tarantino goes in, he knows what the story's going to be, he leaves you hints, he writes it perfectly. It's a great heist movie, even though it's not a heist. Obviously everyone knows the stuck in the middle with you cutting off that ear scene that Michael Madsen just is a monster. And the soundtrack, Tarantino knows how, he has perfect needle drops. He knows exactly the kind of score he's going for with all the 70s music. And a little fun fact for you about me, I wanted to wear those sunglasses and those suits with those thin black ties at my wedding, and I'll have you know my wife wouldn't let me. But I wanted to because I'm such a huge fan of Reservoir Dogs, and this movie, something about the way Tarantino shoots a movie. Like, this movie came out in 1992, but it looks very much like a 70s movie, and that's just the way Tarantino makes movies. It's incredible, the way he shoots film, and you just know because he loves movies. We have a director who loves movies, making movies. Like, for him, this is his passion, that's all he's ever wanted to do, and it just shows on screen. And Reservoir Dogs was the start of it all. It's a beautiful movie. If you haven't seen Reservoir Dogs yet, trust me, I'm doing you a favor and letting you know. Go see Reservoir Dogs. Coming in at number 2 is probably a cheat for all you guys, but it's Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, starring Uma Thurman as the bride and on her revenge tour to kill Bill and everybody who destroyed her and kill her baby and everything that she had going on at the time. So Kill Bill 1 and 2, I'm counting as one movie, because if Tarantino originally wanted it to be one movie, but he didn't want to cut anything, so he released them in back-to-back years, Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2. And I think most people choose Kill Bill Volume 1 as their favorite of the two, and I think it's better too, obviously, because it ends on the crazy 88 fight scene, but it's still, the whole thing, it's a great story. It's an amazing revenge story. Uma Thurman, she's never been better than she has been in this movie. We get Lucy Liu, I think she's also really good in this movie. So is Daryl Hannah and Michael Madsen. These people all play great roles, and obviously done to Tarantino perfection. Paying homage to, kung fu films that he loves and spaghetti westerns that he loves, and Tarantino does that better than anybody. And in this movie, we get a bunch of like over-the-top violence. Everyone knows the crazy 88 fight scene at the end of the first one. And then it slows down a little bit for the second one, but we get that awesome scene in the casket where she, she can concentrate. I don't think I could do that. I'd be dead immediately. I mean, I couldn't do any of this, if I'm being honest. But I'd really, I'm not even a real big fan of Kung Fu movies. And I love this movie. I love these two movies so much. I only can't put them at number one just because our number one is just special to me from when I saw it and everything like that. But this movie I come back to, and they're both pretty long movies, and combined I probably watch them twice a year. I'm not gonna lie. I love Kill Bill 1 and 2. So if you haven't seen Kill Bill 1 and 2, make sure you go check it out. Coming in at number one is probably no surprise to anybody. It's Pulp Fiction, starring John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman. And this movie is told non-linearly, and it was my first experience seeing a movie like this. Like, you got, it starts one way, then it ends basically the next scene over, but you get such great, iconic, this is where Tarantino became Tarantino. This is where he's taking actors who might not be at the top of their game anymore, like Travolta after the 80s, and he's rising them up and to be another great performance out of them. And, John Travolta in this movie is phenomenal. I fell in love with John Travolta because of this movie. You get this and Samuel Jackson's Jules. It's the only Bible verse I know is from this movie. It's great. It's just a great movie, It's so violent. That scene with the adrenaline shot to the heart. I mean, this is the only movie that I'll go up to somebody and I'll be like, heroin's coming back in a big way. And they'll know where it's from. It's from Pulp Fiction. It's the only movie, I quote this movie all the time, and these quotes are not that great, If you're going to bring in the Gimp, you know where it's from. And it's from this movie, and I can't say enough about Pulp Fiction. This movie I saw way too young. I think I saw this movie when I was 12, and I've listened to this whole soundtrack probably hundreds of times. I found music I never would have heard, and it's from Pulp Fiction. It's shot again kind of similar to Reservoir Dogs. Like, they feel like they're kind of cousins, where it feels like even though it came out in the 90s, it feels like it was shot in the 70s. And that's just all Tarantino paying homage to what he loves. And it's like he tapped into what I love, because now I love what he loves because he showed me. I wouldn't have known about any of this if it wasn't for Tarantino. So I owe a lot in my film watching love because of Quentin Tarantino and because of Pulp Fiction. So even if I might end up liking a Tarantino movie more, I wouldn't be the film watcher and film lover I am today without Pulp Fiction, so I owe so much to it, so it'll always be my number one Tarantino movie. But if you haven't seen any of these movies, make sure you go check them out. I can recommend every single one of them, even Death Proof. But if you're going to watch that, I would just say just watch it on its own. But The Grindhouse with Planet Terror that him and Robert Rodriguez did is still really good. So I'm planning on doing one of these a month. If you guys like it, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And if you have a director you want me to rank all their films, please leave it in the comments section below. And as always, thanks for joining me here today, and we'll be seeing you around, and make sure you tell all your friends.